Hello everyone, I am Rod and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Hollins High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Hello everybody, we are back in our inventory setup tutorial, and this is part 4. So in this one we're going to look at how to set up the controls for working inside of our inventory. So inside of the demo project here, I went ahead and set one up. Get rid of those guys right out of the way. So inside of here, we're going to set up a cursor, and of course you can use your mouse and you can move around, or you can use the keyboard and move through your inventory. And being able to do this will allow us to select, deselect, or drop an item or equip an item. Before we can really do any of the fancy stuff with any of the items, we have to get the mechanics of working inside of our inventory set up. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close this and we will jump into our project here. And of course we're in the project we were in last time. I'm going to go ahead and open up my game object here, object game. And I'm going to go into the step event. Sorry, I'm going to go into the draw event. This is where we were as we were setting up our inventory. I'm going to go ahead and close that so I can open up the code here. And in our case inventory, this is our basic code for setting up the inventory and the boxes and all that good stuff. If you haven't done this part yet, most certainly go back and watch the other tutorials so that you can get set up. If you're familiar with how a lot of this stuff works, then you're probably fine. Before we move on, I do want to clean some things up just because some of these variables we're going to reuse, and not having to rewrite some things will be a little bit helpful. So I know we're going to use this slot size a few times, and we should be able to adjust this whenever we want. So I'm going to move this into our create event. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those. Let's see. I'll get rid of this title here for the inventory offset position. Alright, draw inventory background. That part's fine. Our create event. So in our create event, we have our number of slots, X and Y, inventory position, whatever. Underneath my slots, X and Y, I'm going to do my slot underscore size, X. And again, that was 32. And then slot size, Y. And that was also 32. Another variable we're going to need, or a pair of variables actually, are going to be the cursor variable. So right now we have an inventory position variable. This is for the position of each individual slot, but we're also going to have a cursor that is going to be drawn to the screen here. So I'm going to do inventory, INV, and we're going to say cursor. I'm going to do cursor X. I'm going to set that to 0, and then inventory cursor Y. I'll also set that to 0. Okay. So to set the controls for this, we're going to actually be inside of our step event. So I'm going to jump into here. Actually, before I go to the step event, let's do the draw event. Let's jump into the draw event here. And we're going to just draw the cursor to the screen so we can actually see it. And as you can see, we have our draw inventory piece and all this good stuff. We're going to go outside of this loop here. So the draw inventory loop, we're going to go outside of that. I'm going to make a new spot. I'm going to call this draw cursor. And since this is going to be the cursor without the mouse, I'll say without mouse. The first part that we need to add to this is our volatile variables here for our x1, y1. We could, of course, put these inside of our creation code and not have to rewrite them as much. But since we're always changing them based on what we need to draw, so unfortunately we do have to write them again and again. You could give them their own individual names and then you wouldn't have to ever change them, but whatever, it's fine. So I'm going to come into here and I'm going to do var x1, and that's going to be a little bit different. We're still going to use our inventory position, but we're also going to use our cursor position. So the first part is going to be INV position X, and that's going to be plus our inventory cursor X, and then that's going to be multiplied by our slot size x. So a lot of it looks the same. So like this part through here is all the same, except for this part. We're changing the ix part to our cursor x part. Okay, so instead of drawing a box for every position, we only need one box, and it has to be in the position of our cursor. So var y1, that's going to be our inventory position y, plus the inventory cursor's y position, multiplied by the slot size y. Our x2 variable is going to be the inventory position x plus, and just like we did here with our 1 plus ix, we're going to do 1. So 1 plus inventory cursor x times the slot size in the x. And then for our var y2, inventory position, this is going to be our y, plus 1 plus inventory cursor y times our slot size in the y. Now, of course, you could set up a function to do a lot of this stuff, but since we have a limit to how many functions we can write in GameMaker's the student version, we will avoid writing a function just to not have so many cluttering up. I think we're limited to like 5 of them. So the next part is to set the color of our cursor box. So if you look up here, we have our draw set color is set to white, and that's going to draw our rectangles here, or boxes here, as individual white squares. But we're going to draw the cursor itself as its own. So draw set color, and you can pick your own color for this. Anything that is a good contrast on white. So you can do yellow, you can do green, blue, red, whatever. But I will do blue, so C_blue. And then I'm going to do draw rectangle. And now I'm constantly changing the color of my rectangle by doing this draw set color, and I have to change it back. If you don't want to do that, and it's like bugging you, you can of course do draw rectangle color, and then you'd have to put the RGB values in here. So that would be red, green, blue, and alpha, and then the outline. And you can do it that way. But this way is fine for me. So x1, y1, x2, y2, and then are we going to draw this as an outline? That's going to be yes, so we're going to say true. And then after we set the color, we're going to want to set it back, but you'll see why in just a second. Let's go ahead and play this so we can see if it'll even show up where it needs to be. Okay, so it does show up in the inventory, but you can see that it does also turn our text blue. This is why we want to set our color back to white. So I'm going to go down and make a little spot, and I will say reset draw color. So draw set color C_white. Now you might be wondering why we've set up this box outside of this inventory loop, and I'm going to show you why. You don't have to copy this piece, but I am going to show you the reason why. If I take this and I put this into the inventory piece here, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. If you're paying attention to me and not just copying the code, you won't get lost. Just make sure you're listening to what I'm saying here. If I go ahead and run this, see what happened? Every time it steps through the loop, it's going to redraw a new box and the color. So, yeah, we don't want to do that. The other issue is we can set it, but it'll have like a partial draw, like it'll only draw like a corner, and then as it's drawing the white piece, it'll draw over it again, and then draw the blue, and then draw the white, then draw the blue, then draw the white. So the reason this is not in here is for the reason you just saw. Another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that. So with that here, let's go into our step event. Scroll down to the inventory piece, so case in inventory. And you might be wondering, well, if we have a case in inventory in our step event and we have one in the draw event, why are we doing two different things in two different cases across two different events? And the answer is GameMaker, but the more precise answer is the way GameMaker handles each one of these events matters. And a step event is updated every step, every tick of the game. The draw event, they do get updated, but they're in a different order. And if you want like keyboard controls and all that stuff to work the way that you would expect them to work, they need to be in the step event. Inside of our step event, we're going to have a spot. We have our little piece here that says exit the inventory. That's where we push that button. We're going to have a spot that says move cursor, and then I'm going to do if keyboard check, and inside of here I'm going to do ORD, and I'm going to set the keys that I want to press. So this is going to be A for my left key. I'm going to do my braces, and inside of here I'm going to set up the cursor. So all I got to do to move the cursor is say inventory position, or sorry, inventory cursor X, and if I'm hitting the A key, I'm moving to the left. So this is going to be minus minus. I'm going to go ahead and copy this piece. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to do an else if. So else and then if. And this is going to be ORD. I'm going to hit the D key. Make sure that these are capital. GameMaker is picky about that. And if we're moving to the right, we're moving a positive direction. So this is going to be cursor plus plus. Go ahead and copy that. This is going to be my W key. And if I'm hitting the W key, I'm going up. So to go up, we need to go in the Y direction, so cursor Y. And we want to go in a negative direction, so minus minus. Next one is going to be down, so that'll be the S key. And this is going to be Y plus plus. And of course, if you want multiple keys in here, all you have to do is separate an OR, and then you do the next keyboard check and whatever key. Okay, so that'll get our cursor moving, and if we hop in here, hit play, we should be able to see it updating for us. So if I hit and then I push the button, you can see the cursor is moving. And it has a really nice one block at a time kind of movement. And the reason for that is we're telling it to move one iteration, but every time it moves one, it actually jumps the size of each box, which is nice. So there we have that. And we can kind of move this outside of our inventory. So we're going to have to set up a boundary for this as well. So let's go ahead and set up the boundary. So inside each one of these, we're going to draw the boundary. So underneath the inventory cursor piece, we're still inside the if statement, so I'm under my keyboard check, moving to the left. And I'm just going to say cursor boundary, and I'll say cursor boundary left, so I know which one I'm going to. It's left. And if our cursor, inventory cursor X, is less than 0, I'll say less than or equal to 0. Then our inventory cursor X will be set to 0. So as it's moving, when it hits the 0 position, it won't go beyond. And its 0 position is actually offset based on the inventory position. So just be aware of that if you have to modify it. It's based on where the inventory currently is. I'm going to go ahead and copy this piece. So copy that. I go into my D key and go ahead and paste this in. and this is going to be inventory bound to the right. And I'm going to change this. It's going to say inventory cursor. I'm going to do greater than or equal to. And you might want to know, what are we going to be greater than or equal to? Well, there's a simple answer. We actually have a variable. If we go back into our draw event here, we have a variable right here called the number of slots in our X position. So we don't want our cursor, because it moves per slot, right? So we don't want it to move less than or greater than the number of slots that we have in the X position. So 0, of course, would be the first slot, and anything greater than the number of slots would be outside the boundary. So if we go back to our step event, we can say if we're moving to the right, that's where the will be greater than the number of slots to the right. So slots X. And then we're going to set this to number of slots X. Simple enough. I'm going to go ahead and play this so you can see. Open this up, and if I move, it won't go past there. And we're going outside our thing. I wonder why. Well, if you think about how our array is set up, arrays count from 0 and up, and we tell it that it can't be greater than 10, right? But we have our numbers. If I go to our create event here, our number of slots in the X is 10. But our loop here says that the IX variable can never be 10, right? So it has to be less than the number of slots. The physical number is 10, but it starts at 0, so it actually goes 0 through 9. So we have to subtract 1 from our total number of slots, because we're starting at 0, and 0 through 9 is 10, but if we write the actual number 10, we're actually going to 11. So I'm going to go back to our step event here, and we're just going to do number of slots minus 1. And we're going to do that for this one as well. Minus 1. Okay, so now I'm going to do the up position. So go ahead and paste that in. We're going to be doing the up boundary, and this will be the Y. And if we're going up, we're heading towards 0, so we don't want to go less than 0. And if we do, we will be at 0, and this will be the boundary for the Y. So inventory cursor Y, 0, 0. The next one, this is going to be down, and then we're going to do greater than or equal to, and this will be the number of slots in the Y. And remember, we have to subtract 1, so minus 1. Because we have 5 slots in the Y, but it doesn't count 1 to 5, it counts 0 to 4. So if it goes to 5, it'll actually be a total of 6. Number of slots in the Y, minus 1. And if we run it, we should be good and not be able to exit our inventory. So if I hit the inventory, and I'm good, I can't go, ooh, I did go below. Let's see what kind of error I have. Left and right works, up works, but when I hit down, I have a bit of an anomaly. Let's take a look. I probably didn't change my X and Y. I didn't. So in my S key, heading down, make sure that's inventory cursor Y. And that should be inventory cursor Y. Let's try that again. Alright, so the down works. Yay! Now it does move a little bit too fast for my liking. So if I tap, it moves, but it moves really quick. And if I just want this box, I'm kind of skipping over it, right? Because it's really sensitive. So we're going to set up a delay. You can set up a delay a couple ways. You could set it to a keyboard check pressed, which will only check one key press, but then you'd have to constantly hit the button to get anywhere. I'm going to set it up so that if you push the button once, it only goes one space, but if you hold the button, it'll slide. Kind of like when you're in any other RPG and you do that. If you tap once, it goes once. If you hold it, it goes ding, 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 and it like does a slide. So to do that, we need 2 more variables. So let's go up to our create event here. And under my inventory cursor piece, I'm going to add a delay. So key delay, that's going to be set to, I'm going to do 5. Now, this number really comes from just experience, but you can always play with this to figure out how fast or slow you want the key to respond. I found this to be good for me. So we have a delay, and then we're going to say key timer, and that's going to be set to 0. And the reason we're setting the key timer to 0 is the first time you hit the key, you don't want there to be a delay on the key. We're going to have the delay start counting when we hold the key down. So that'll give us the step for each key. So in the draw event here, we're going to unfortunately have to wrap each one of these keys. So inside of the first one, we're going to say if key underscore timer is less than or equal to 0, go ahead and wrap this inventory piece here. If it is there, we're going to step it, and then we're going to say key underscore timer equals key underscore delay. We're going to say else key timer minus minus. So when we first press the key, it's going to check and say, hey, what is our timer? If our timer is less than or equal to 0, we're going to go ahead and do a thing, and then we're going to set the timer, and then we're going to count down. Let's go ahead and do the next one. So it's going to be the same code. So if key timer is less than or equal to 0, go ahead and wrap this. Key timer is set to key delay. Else timer key timer minus minus. Do our next 2. And you can pick your battles here. You can either copy paste it or you can do it by hand. Either way works. Just make sure you're putting in the right stuff. So timer is less than or equal to 0. Key timer is equal to key delay, else key timer minus minus. And then if key timer less than or equal to 0, then the key timer is set to the key delay, else key timer minus minus. And if we run this, open it up, and if we hit the button, we can go between. And if we hold the button, it will toggle through. Now there is a bit of a hard delay between the buttons. So like if I touch and let go, and then touch and let go, the timer is still actually counting down. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the timer to go back to 0 when you let off the keys. That way it's a much smoother transition. And we can do that by having an else at the very bottom here of our string of else ifs, right? So if this, else if that, else if this, else if that, and then we can just say else, and then at the very, very bottom we'll just say timer, key timer is 0. And if we run it, If I hit it, it steps through, really nice. And then if I hold the key, the timer goes. Real nice. So if I go back to the loop here, draw event inside of our loop, and then we are going to have to move this right above our loop here, this draw set color. We are going to move this into our loop piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control X on that. And I'm going to move that into here where it says Draw Inventory Slots. I'll just go ahead and paste that into place there. That way, this is being set. It has to start gray, and then this gets set per block. And then we're outside the loop. So that's how we can move the cursor with the keyboard moving back and forth. I'm going to break here, and then the next one we're going to set up how to do the mouse. Okay? So go ahead and save your work, and I will see you in the next video.